You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Philip Heitzen, and today is Friday, February 25th, 2022.
6.
We're also delighted to be partnering with Zip on a research paper on the all-important topic of employee experience during the intake to procure process. Now, their experience during the process often defines their perception of the role of procurement as either a bureaucratic gatekeeper or an enabler of business strategy. So tell us what you think. Does employee experience really matter to procurement? Head on over to artofprocurement.com/experience survey. That's artofprocurement.com/experience survey to give us your thoughts.
5.
This week on The Art of Procurement, we featured a special series of 4 15-minute podcasts that we created in partnership with Dun & Bradstreet. The series focused on ESG and how you can both seize the opportunities but also mitigate the risks associated with integrating suppliers' ESG information and ratings into your supplier performance and ongoing monitoring programs. In episode 1, I discussed with Rochelle March, the head of ESG product at Dun & Bradstreet, what kind of ESG data should procurement be collecting from their or on their suppliers. I then asked where procurement professionals should look to gather that information.
I think, there's two routes. One is kind of sourcing that data externally, and the other is, collecting it yourself. So on the one hand, you could work with a provider like D&B and other providers that are out there to instantly try to get a directional score on your suppliers. Mm-hmm. And that way you can hotspot higher risk ones and also evaluate candidates for onboarding. If you're just getting started and maybe aren't ready to invest in that type of solution, it's important to prioritize what type of information you really want to know about suppliers. Is it their carbon footprint? Is it their policies on labor? Is it their diversity? And ask them that through the onboarding contracts or as part of a requirement in RFPs.
Right.
And then, throughout the year, as you interact with your suppliers and request, update contracts and so on, creating opportunities to collect that type of information. And many suppliers may already have something. So it's definitely increasing in popularity. But many too, it's going to be their first time. And so just being really clear on the type of information you want. And I would recommend, just from a data perspective, trying to get something that can be standardized, like a number or a binary type of request, rather than an explanation
Right.
and so on, because that's just, analytically hard to do.
You can listen to the entire 4-part series at artofprocurement.com/ESG risk.
4.
Does the name procurement help us or hinder us? It's an age-old debate, and one that I discussed on a recent LinkedIn audio event, inspired by the example of HR, who have rebranded many times over the years to reflect their changing value proposition from personnel to HR to human capital management. And in a subsequent poll that I asked on LinkedIn to ascertain what terminology most teams are using, I had 240 responses, finding that 58% were using the term procurement, 27% strategic sourcing, 9% were using some other terminology, and 6% were using purchasing. Now, heading into the comments, there are definitely 2 different camps. One that says a rebrand is necessary, that in many cases the word procurement conjures up enough negative connotations that people will never change the perception of what we can do while we still use that name procurement. And then the second camp that says we need to lead through actions and that will be enough. Now, here's my view. First of all, we absolutely need to lead through actions. No changing in names will ever change the perception if we're delivering a service that isn't what the business needs. It doesn't align with stakeholder needs. However, I believe that we are moving away from the term procurement. This is seen from the largest software providers in the space as an example, who are investing significant sums of money in positioning themselves as spend management solutions rather than procurement solutions. Spend management is a more literal explanation of what we do. However, I'd like to go one step further and remove the management with enablement, because at the end of the day, we, at least in indirect procurement, are here to enable the business to meet or exceed its business objectives versus managing their spend for them.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
Managing and mitigating cost increase requests in this inflationary period is top of the priority list right now for many procurement professionals. I was asked for advice by an Art of Procurement listener this week who is finding that suppliers will not commit to prices through a sourcing event for more than 60 days, longer than the time that the sourcing project will take from beginning through to final contracting. I had 3 different recommendations. They included ask the supplier to provide details of how they price, such as cost plus if they are reselling products such as in the MRO category, or an input cost breakdown. Place a clear mechanism in the contract on how cost increases and decreases must be governed, and ensure that should the mechanism trigger and a price increase is put into effect, that you can have a regular review schedule so that if the input costs decrease, you can claw back the increase. While cost increases may be inevitable right now, there are many things you can do to mitigate them, even if you do not have formal mechanisms in place, and I'll share some of those tips over future episodes of Procurement 6.
2.
This week has seen the significant escalation of tensions in Ukraine and sanctions on Russian entities that has the potential to have significant impact on your supply chain, whether that's in the movement of physical products or the availability of Ukrainian-based workers, or their availability to access the internet. If you haven't already, now is the time to be reviewing the potential impact on your spend categories or subcategories. Many of you may be utilizing software that quickly identifies potential points of failure that need to be mitigated, but if you don't have access to this type of technology right now, you should be mapping the supply chain for the most critical products or services that you buy. Which of these may potentially be impacted by escalating conditions? Second, scenario plan. What would happen if Russia cut off the internet in Ukraine? Or to energy prices, should countries stop importing natural gas or oil from Russia? Or if Ukrainian airspace was closed? Next, work with your suppliers to dust off their business continuity or disaster recovery plans. Talk through the potential risk and their mitigation plans. And finally, look at your category-specific business continuity plan, especially if you anticipate an impact across multiple suppliers, products, or services that you buy across a particular category or subcategory, especially if you've identified some systemic risk. Check out Art of Procurement episode 325 for more details on category continuity plans.
1.
Are you ready for AOP Digital Outcomes? It's a brand new digital conference from Art of Procurement that will take place between March the 8th and the 10th, 2022. Each day, for 2 hours a day, we're going to be taking a different approach to discussing procurement transformation and focusing on what matters most, the outcomes that digital transformations deliver. Through the event, we'll focus on 3 key themes: driving strategy, spend, and scale. We continue to add speakers, and I'm delighted to announce additional new sessions this week, including a discussion around how procurement can effectively scale category management and can digital help. We'll be joined by panel members Remco van Hoek, Professor of Supply Chain Management at the University of Arkansas, an Executive Advisor of Procurement Transformation at Moët Hennessy, and former SVP of Sourcing and Procurement at the Walt Disney Company, alongside WeWork's Global Head of Procurement, Sourcing and Supply Chain, Gary Levitan. Now, to make sure you don't miss out on this content, please do register now. And if you're unable to attend in person, as a registrant, you will get access to all of the session recordings. Just go to artofprocurement.com/digital outcomes. That's artofprocurement.com/digital outcomes to find out more.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.